It is hugely important to the life of an organization to serve and give back.
Right.
If you have been a member of the organization, your club, for 3 years or longer, and you've never served in a board position, you've never helped coordinate a meeting, you've never hosted, I kind of have to say shame on you. Because about 3 years, and especially at 5 years, hopefully you've gotten enough out of that club. It's worth your time to give back to that club. And that's the way that we push forward. And we are hugely proponents of that, again, in the professional arena. And that's why we have PPA now for how many years, Fred? A lot, over 100. It's the oldest.
125.
Yeah. So hugely important to do that. It isn't a tremendous amount of time that you have to put in, but I'll tell you, you definitely get back more than what you put in when you serve in a board position.
Thank you. You all probably wonder why we're seeing a 1-year-old message from Anthony Rumley. That was the message that was played last October, and I listened carefully, and I said, I'm going to join the board. I was so moved by Anthony's call to action that I put in a message and asked if there was a position that I could hold on the board. And I'm here tonight to ask you to make the same consideration that I made last year and to give some thought to what he said. If you've been here for 3 years and you've gotten anything out of this club, then we want you to join the board. Our board is in need of several positions: president, vice president, treasurer, not treasurer, sorry about that, Doug, secretary. We have a lot of positions that are open this year, and I come to you and just ask that you will consider it strongly and hear this call to action and join the board. It's a lot of fun. We have good conversations. You learn so much. You are able to put in ideas. This is a board that's open to ideas. I've made a number of suggestions this year that were greeted with warmth and embraced. And that's my call to you all tonight, is to consider strongly joining the board or other committees that we have. So that's it. Thank you.
I think I'm back.
Oh, there you are.
I think.
Okay, there you are.
Yay. What did I miss?
Well, Leo thinks that you have a lot of messages to give us.
I do. I was starting to do that, and then it went. I think I will give you just sort of Cliff's notes. End of year competition is coming up, so get ready for those entries up to 12. I think I got most of that in before my computer dropped me. And I mentioned the in-person meetings for the next 2 months. So next month we have Kim Kiley doing a presentation for us. And in November, we have our very own Ted Jakuta is doing a presentation in November. And then we have a banquet coming up in December. So those are the 3 big topics on our calendar coming up for the next few months. For those of you who are new to our end of year competition, Michael Orr and I are doing a little Zoom meetup to go over the requirements and the we'll answer questions that you might have about submitting your images for the end of year competition. And look at meetup for that date. It's coming up at the end of this month. So we'll be glad to entertain anyone who wants to pop in and ask those questions. And I think that's it for announcements, unless there's anybody else that that has something that they would like to add. All right. And I'm going to turn it over to Susan Reed, our membership director, who has a little bit of a public service announcement for everyone. And then our very own exhibit director, Dan Maurer, is going to introduce our speaker for tonight. So
Karen, I took care of that public service announcement during your hiatus, and we are ready to move forward.
All right. So then Dan, you want to take it away and introduce us to Henry?
Sure. this is Henry. Wave, Henry. Thank you. Henry is my oldest, bestest friend. We've known each other for about 60 years, actually a little bit longer, but we've been friends for about 60 years. We've done a lot together. We ended up after our high school years and so forth. At one point, we plopped ourselves both down at the same time in New York City. And at that time, Henry was busy working on his Master of Fine Arts degree mainly in painting. Actually, you did a lot of other things besides painting, and I was busy studying motion picture production and photography at the Germain School, and that kind of was really what I think made us tight friends. So we ended up eventually both moving out of New York City at the same time, landed in Charlottesville, Virginia, lived the hippie life for a while Henry was teaching in art school there. And then he ended up going off to North Carolina, where he became a professor of fine art at East Carolina University. And then over the years, Henry added to his repertory a business of commercial photography, which he practiced both in Eastern North Carolina as well as in Atlanta, Georgia. And throughout this time, we've gotten together from time to time, often with cameras in hand, and gone traveling around the country, traveling through Mexico, and doing similar things. And I think Henry has been a great influence on me and my photographic work. I never studied art formally, but I've certainly been around it now for a very long time. In any way, I'm really, really happy that he offered to be our evaluator this evening. And that's all I'll say, because Henry's going to have 88 images to evaluate tonight. You're going to need all the time you got.
Thank you, Dan. Just a brief little story to talk about how close we were in terms of developing our photographic interests. I remember getting a Christmas present from Dan, which was a beautiful print. I won't describe it, but it was a beautiful photographic print of an image he took when he visited me in North Carolina. I said, well, thanks, Dan, but how did you get my image? The print was almost identical. The image was almost identical to one I shot. I thought he had my image printed. So that's a little scary, actually. So that's kind of kindred spirits. So
there were times when we were standing side by side with our cameras pointing in the same direction at various places around the Western Hemisphere.
That happened. I guess I have a few things to say here. First of all, I'm really pleased to be with all of you. It's quite a privilege. I really, I was a little amazed at the 88 images I got. And I want you to know, I looked at every one of them, spent a lot of time with every one of them. I'm used to spending time with a photographer. This is all very new to me. I love the repartee. I love to talk back and forth. I like to say something and get a response. So this is going to be a little bit different. But all I ask of you is stay open to what I bring to you, because all I want to do is be an objective mirror, give you some feedback from this perspective. But I realize that we all are different, and that's the richness of being a photographer. So I'm going to say things that simply come from my gut or my heart. I like to talk from my heart. One of the things I really noticed in looking at all of the images, and I'm going to say this now because I kept on saying to myself, God, you say, are you beating a drum? But I think it's really important, and that is composition. I really feel blessed, that I got an undergraduate degree in graphic design. I worked as a graphic designer. Then I got a degree in painting. And then I was teaching at East Carolina University, and all of a sudden I decided I was going to go back to New York on a leave of absence. And for 2 years, I first worked at the School of Visual Arts, studying studio photography. Then I worked in studios in New York. And so my basic photo experience was in studio work. And I think all that together gave me a really keen and appreciative sense of the power of design. I did write down something I noticed about, what I thought was probably the best single statement about minimalist photography. And that is stripping a subject down to its most elegant essence. That's pretty powerful stuff. And in regards to what I'm talking about in composition, so what I'm paying attention to is the energy that happens, the message that you send through very, very precise awareness of the energies going on within the field. Out of this minimalist movement, there came a rule. I hate rules, but I think this is good to bring up now. And it's called the rule of thirds. If you're not familiar with it, it might be something to look at, because I know it's really hard to get the information you need to make some difficult compositional decisions. So I'm going to be talking a lot about that. And again, I just hope you stay open. I really want to just give you something from my perspective, and hopefully it'll help you open up some things, especially in the minimalist photography. One last thing. Look at minimalism everywhere. My minimalist teachers was, when I was in New York working in studio, my heroes are Penn, Avedon, Hero, Halsman. These are incredible minimalist photographers. It's interesting, they were all graphic studio photographers. But also at the same time, the paintings of Ad Reinhardt or Stella or Eugene Smith or Rothko or Judd or so forth. And in music, people like Steve Reich and Philip Glass. And we're talking in the beginning here a little bit about, there is also a website, a Facebook site I checked out that I found to be pretty strong stuff. And that's Minimalist Photography on Facebook. So you might want to look at it, you might want to join it, continue the conversation. So that's all I think I had to say right now. One more thing. I'll talk a lot about intention. I think it's really important to know your intentions, see what you really want to get, why you are making this statement, why you're expressing yourself, and seeing how much you are on target with that. I think that's one of the biggest things, to continue to be aware of what your intention is, and then use design and composition, all the design elements to fulfill your intention. So I guess someone else is going to start popping images, and here we go. And I apologize for having a minute or whatever I have, but that's the name of this particular game. I'll say one other thing. I don't know how this is going to work. Yeah, I'm looking at my screen now, and I see a bunch of white names, black fields. I love to see people. It makes me feel like there's actually somebody here. But anyway, we'll do what we can do. Thanks, Paul.
So Henry, how it usually goes is that I guess we'll be displaying the images here, and what I'll do is read the title of the image, and then you'll do your evaluation. And after you're finished with it, then we read the name of the photographer.
Right.
And move on
Yes,
then.
right.
All right. So yes, the title of this image is Alone and Withering.
Yeah. So what really struck me is I love the object. I love the photograph. The thing I would have to say is that as a studio photographer, I want to give it a place to live. I want to give it an atmosphere. And minimalist doesn't mean that it doesn't have support from the field. And I feel the field here is too stark, so I probably would bring some tone into it. The other thing that struck me was the glass is very alluring. I think it says love, and I say that because I can't quite get it, but actually I find that distracting, and I probably simplify it to the point that it's just a plain glass vase or something to really support that magnificent flower. Checking my notes here. Yeah, that's pretty much, I think there is a competition with my interest between the flower and the glass vase, and I would much rather stay with the flower. And also minimalist is a, you know, it has to be a fine balance between the figure ground thing here. I really find the starkness to be too much. I would bring some variation, some tonal variation into that studio lighting situation. Okay.
Okay. That's Tony Johnson. The next image is by Wind and Water.
Right. I have to get rid of my screen here because it's like it's competing with this. Yeah, Wind and Water. Well, what I wrote down about this, and this is I wrote down near perfect. I really was struck by this image. This is a case, though, I feel just a little bit of cropping would really increase the dynamism of it. And what I'm talking about is I'm looking at the right side. I'm looking at how that movement is from the center, pulling out, and then wants to go off the right. I don't mind it going off the right. That's natural. But for me, just a little bit of cropping off the top and to the right, I think would enhance the energy of that beautiful formation. Okay.
Ed Hageman. Baby, it's cold outside.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I love the composition. I love the starkness of the trees. I love the sense of cold. But I find I would like to have a little bit more tonality in the background, in the skies. I don't think it would rob it of its simple graphic impact. But I really think it would give a little bit of more of a comforting feel to that. I find this to be a little stark too. But the composition is very strong. I perhaps would crop a little bit off the bottom here. But that, again, is just my wanting to adjust things in a very precise way. Check my notes, see what else I have here. Yeah. What I'd like is the play between the middle fir tree and the group on the left. But I just want everyone to be aware of the pool of putting images in the middle. It gives a lot of strength, a lot of power to draw the eye to it. But I think at times that can be too much. And I don't know what to say about this. I did put down a note here that perhaps it was that pine tree was a little bit too centered. You know, hey, what do we do? What do we do now? But I think the thing to really look at when we go through these is be aware of how much we're composing in camera. And I know we all do that, but it's really, really important to be aware of that. And if you're a studio photographer, then that slow process really refines the capacity just to bring some precision to that composition and being aware of what's going on there. Okay.
Susan Van Manen. Between heaven and earth.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm struck by the heaven. I'm just struck by the power of the heaven. And I think that that's probably a little bit too much. I'm also struck by the contrast or the lack of modulation. Even though I know the simplicity of the field is what we're looking for. But I probably would crop a little bit off the bottom and maybe yeah, give the earth some gravity. I'm just overwhelmed with the openness there. And so I guess that's part of what I'm saying. I just watch for what energy it evokes. And yeah, thank you.
Dan Maurer. Black cat chickadee.
Oh yeah. This image is so powerful in terms of the detail in that chickadee. It almost looks like it's a gravure. I mean, I just love the detail in the wing feathers. And I love the gesture of it. The thing that strikes me is I really want to see something in that black. It's kind of spooky to me. You know, I enlarged it and I kept on looking to see if there is a little bit of indication of the eye. And also the fact that the decision to have it on this branch, twig, and have it looking out, I love it going out and looking out into the openness, but it really seems to be more about now a print on a paper. I've lost my sense of the power of the photograph. I think there's too much field, and the overall impression is that it's kind of a print. It's artificial. It's almost like a graphic print, and it's losing some of its photographic power. Thank you.
Ed Dracuda. Blue on blue.
Yeah, I know something that says, wow, what can you say? It's so powerful. Yeah, I'm looking at this. I want to balance the composition. I mean, this is so dynamic. My hands are going across all this, but and you can't see it. But it just is the dynamism of that triangle is so powerful. But I really feel that it's a little bit out of balance, and that again has to do with everything being pushed to the right and down the corner. The thrust of the triangle is moving that way. It just is kind of pushing my energy to that corner. So I probably would crop it a little bit, maybe on the left and the right, so that it stabilizes a little bit. I guess that's what I wrote down. I wanted to stabilize. And again, here's in composition, you bring an intuitive sense. You just really want to feel that energy. So it's a powerful photograph, and it's really close to being perfect, but I just want to crop it a little bit more so it just doesn't start to push to that one side.
Cindy Walker. Bouncing.
Yeah, bouncing. Well, this image is very well done. I really felt this is uses selective focus very well. The decisive moment is just brilliant. And I really appreciate the fact that it's black and white. There's only one thing that I'm curious about. And now that I see it up here, I might not worry about so much. But I'm curious about the decision to have that really fine white line around everything. And I can see where maybe it's containing it, but I'm not sure it's really necessary. It's a very nice image.
Ling Whitworth. Brutal realization.
Okay. Well, I wrote for myself, what's brutal? I mean, it is brutal. I mean, it's just relentless. And to me, it maybe is just see what I'm seeing now. Maybe you're seeing it here. It's hard for me to differentiate the black edge over here. So that black shape in the corner is very powerful. Unfortunately, I want to have some differentiation between the blacks and the other shadow areas to start to balance that out. For me, it's a little bit too graphically intense. I would probably cut down the intensity and give me some more detail in some of the shadow areas. It's very intriguing image. It's very powerful image. But for me, it's just a little bit too much that way. So I want some more finesse, I guess would be the word.
Perry Matthews. Catching air.
Another very strong image. I mean, it just really grabs you. I want a little bit more tone in the sky. I know that the figure is very powerful. I know the intensity is part of the intention, but I want just a little bit more tone and maybe something that'll bring back a little bit of the lines. It's a little bit unsettling that this is just kind of floating out into, off we go into the wild blue yonder. Yeah, I think if we just brought some more of that tone in there to help us see, and I'm moving closer, and I did zoom in on it. They're there, but I want to be able to see those cables that allow that character to be flying through the sky like that.
Paul Bickford. Clarity.
Huh. Well, I guess I'm all wrong with this. I thought this was an image of a friend of mine, but it is a nice, wonderful image. I find it very musical. And what I mean by that is, as the eye moves through there, it's almost kind of Paul Klee-like. There's a lot of tonalities. There's a lot of sound to it. And I really like to bring sound into my work. I feel like a lot of visual work has a sound component to it. It has other senses that come into play. Here's a little picking around. I really love that everything is contained top to bottom, but I don't feel that we want to have the edges on the left and the right, the windows start to go off. I would really kind of want the whole score to be inside that so that the eye can move without a sense of it going on beyond the edges of the frame. I also would like a little bit more tone. I find perhaps it's just here's a Pennsylvania Dutch term, a smidgen too contrasted. I want to see some of the richness in the stains on the building. It's there. I just want to see a little bit more.
Linda Schmiel. Dead Vly Loneliness.
Wow. Um, very dramatic, very, very beautiful gestures. First thing that struck me is I really feel like the color is dominating too much. I really would like to see that muted a little bit, so my attention isn't so much the color, but a little bit more to the gesture of the tree. Also, here's a case where if I crop a little bit on the bottom and a little bit on the right, just a little bit, then all of a sudden that gesture, that tree seems to come to life more.
Martin Evans. Dwarf by Mother Nature.
Did you say dwarfed by Mother Nature?
Yes, dwarfed.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, this also is near perfect. There's just a really sublime feeling here. There's a peacefulness I really enjoy, and I can just get lost totally in those clouds. Again, I feel that, and maybe I'm starting to feel my taste, but I would just take a little bit off the bottom so the impact, the energy of the clouds is a little more strongly felt. But otherwise, it's a very fine composition. I really like it.
Ann Fulcher. Elegance in Contrast.
Yeah, this is another very nice tonal image. I really like the quality, the lighting, the richness of the flower, the rose. I don't know if, here's another case. I'm just wondering if it wasn't a little bit more square. Again, I feel like there seems to be kind of a self-consciousness to the amount of black on the right side. So maybe crop that down a little bit. It will allow the opening of the rose to be more apparent. It's a beautiful, delicate image. Tones are well developed, so I really like it. I just had some questions. I would just invite you to play a little bit more with how it might be cropped and what would be released or evoked when it's cropped a little bit more tightly.
Susan Jasper Reed. Endless Channel.
Yeah. So I really love the spatiality. I really also think that that sense of the channel, that the horizon is a little bit too much in the center. I would like it to be a little bit different perspective. And I know you take the shot, you see it, but this is a case where maybe composing it a little bit more in the camera so that there's a little bit more of the horizon towards the top and not so much towards the middle. Also, if I take away some of the interest in the houses to the left, just crop that a little bit, it allows me to get more involved with the spatiality and the perspective of that endless channel.
Pat Davis. Going Up.
Yeah, I really wanted to speak to me. You know, this remind me, I have a little story to tell here. I remember one of the times I used to photograph large trailers for truck companies. And one of the things we'd have to do is bring out on location, and we would bring out huge reflective cards. We would start to bring lights into different parts of that trucks to make it really sing. And that's the only thing I would say about this, that I just would love so much to turn that character into a little bit more of a gem. I mean, I just really love its funny expression. It is so, how do I say this? I mean, I just love, it makes me chuckle. This is so animated, but I think you could light it more, but I don't know. I don't even know where this is, but I would encourage you to see if you can't bring more luminosity, especially into the bottom part. I don't know if you have access to this and can do things that way, or if this was shot in the studio.
Marianne Barnhart. Gray weather ahead.
Yeah. The first thing that strikes me is that this really love the lushness of the field, and it works really well in terms of the, I call them Jenny Wrens, looking out into that. There's a little pickiness. I just don't quite want this tail to be going off the field. I just want him to be a little bit more the totality of the wren. That's the only criticism I would say I have of that. I'm looking at my notes. Yeah, everything else is very delightful. I just feel that it's a little thing that I don't want his tail to go off the bottom of the field.
Sarah. Hello there.
Yeah. For me, I want to see more of this character. I want to see more of this crab. I understand it in the hand. There's something enticing about the hand, but it's a little bit too landscape-like. I just really want there to be more of the crab. Now, how does that work in terms of the minimalist? I don't know. I don't know that there isn't another way not to have it so much of a story of a crab in the landscape. Yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about it.
Carrie Gottlieb. I'll be back.
Oh, this is, yeah. So this is this, what's the word I would use? I love the mystery. I love the irony of it. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. I would just say, watch the edges. Maybe there can be a little more tight cropping. You know, this is really something. The black shadow there bothers me. This is a little confusing, but I really love the humor here. I love the irony of it. I'm looking at my notes again. Yeah, well, I put in my notes that perhaps a little bit more selective focus. It's a little, you know, the ocean, the waves in the back start to get a little soft and give some depth to it, but I think maybe a little bit more of that. To give me a greater sense of the isolation of the cane, or a separation from the figure in the ground. I really love the humor of it. I really love the feel of that. But I would probably just try to create a little bit more, maybe even some more mystery with some softening of the background.
Mark Best. Island in Lake.
Yeah. Well, I find it just a little bit too dark. Maybe it's the screen. But just a little bit too dark. And also, this is another case of the textures are so rich that I want to get rid of some of the texture down the bottom. I hope you can follow me on this. It's just that the field is so nice, but there's a nice event going on down that bottom edge that I find is a little distracting. Yeah.
Okay, Michael Fleetwood.
Okay.
Just a little green.
Interesting. I don't, huh. Is it just me? But right now, that green is looking a little soft when I don't remember it being soft. Because the texture of that green is really important. But
Yeah, it was submitted as a very small image, so it's kind of, you're getting a lot of pixelation.
Oh, I see, yeah. Well, I just, I love the color scheme. I love the spatiality of the reddish brick and the white brick to the right. I just think there's a little bit too much green. What would happen if that green was cropped a little bit on the left so that it would have a powerful square? I think it would relate better to the right side. Green is just a little bit too much, but in a way it separates. I don't know if that's a term I want to use, but I would look at cropping a little bit on the left. As I do that myself, I really feel that the whole composition holds together a little bit better. It relates better than to the right side.
Wiley Wanveer. Lonely Tree.
Okay. All right, hold a second. I found it fun. Sorry about that. I lost my notes. Well, there's a wonderful mood here. I think this is an excellent photograph. Great mood, tone, slight coloration. I really like the tone, the coloration in the ground. Just a slight sense of sepia to it. I don't know if this is a print or, but it has a wonderful richness that I associate with tone prints. Yeah.
Liz Smith, monolith.
Okay. Yes, it is a monolith. I would look for more detail in the tones. I find it's this losing some of its geometry. It's really important to see have some of the structural elements here rather than just being so black, especially down the bottom here. So I would just back off on some of the blacks and maybe the contrast a little bit to bring a little bit more energy into the shadow areas. Otherwise, you know, it's an incredibly impactful, powerful image.
Joe Ring, monument.
Another monolith. So I get so drawn to the activity down on the bottom. I just really want this monument to have a little grounding. Just a little bit of sense of it so it doesn't seem to get lost in that blackness. And it's just all, I guess they're flags. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a curious crop down there. I would add more of the ground there to help stabilize and hold that image on the ground so that it can be, you know, what's the word? I guess stabilized. Yeah. Okay.
Sasha Iyer, morning coffee.
Yeah. Well, for me, this is kind of like, I forget what the name of the first image was, alone and wilting, withering. For me, there's too much contrast because of the black. And if I look at the coffee and the black coffee, and then all of a sudden it becomes a whole. So somehow I want some more modulation. You know, you don't necessarily lose the minimalist impact. In fact, here I think the effort to make this minimalist by being stark makes it very kind of what takes away from the simplicity of it. It becomes too dramatic in a way. It is just, for me, too graphic. I really like some of the subtle things I start to see, but I don't think they're supported by the tonality in the background. In other words, I see some triangulation starting to happen with the paper, the spoon, and through the cup. But for me, it's just too stark. There's not enough richness to it.
Very hostile winner. Nightfall.
Right. Oh, you're going to hate me for this. There's this one little picky thing I want to do. I love the graphic quality. I love the colors. I love the swan goose element. But I keep seeing a couple, and I zoomed in, and there's a couple lights in there. I just would get rid of some of those lights on the shore. Yeah, and I do find the color to be little too saturated. I think often do we want to create drama through color saturation, and it can be just a bit too much. And so much of it is so powerful, the textures and everything else, that they kind of lost because of the thrust of the colors.
Very Troxel. No wink.
Yeah. The first thought came to my mind is they're friends. The relationship between the heron and the no wake buoy is kind of this magnetic. But here again, I really would like to amplify that tension, that connection, by not having the buoy so centrally oriented. Here's another case of it. Perhaps it was more of a square composition and the buoy moved off the right. That would be more powerful. Also, it is so bifurcated. That horizon line. So if I change the composition and crop in so that there's more of our attention brought to the heron and the buoy, then for me, it's a lot more effective image. So I would play around with the composition because everything else is delightful. The tonality, just that wonderful connection that they seem to have. Yeah. And the atmosphere really is nice, but I just really feel it's so much is lost because of the buoy being so much a center of attention.
Round trip. On boats.
Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, this is such a wonderful gesture to it. Maybe a touch, a little oversaturated, but I really like the selective focus. I really like the character that's drawn comes from the stalk of the grass. Yeah, this is just another little thing. There's some areas in here that I just don't want to have these little dark parts along the horizon. So for me, I probably would have come down a little bit lower with my camera so that those things on the horizon, I don't know what they are, would be lost in the grass, and it would just be the grasses to the sky.
Aaron Davis.
Yeah. I just really like the characterization. I like a lot of the composition maybe is a little bit too weighted to the right. But the thing that I would look at is just muting that color a little bit. I don't understand exactly the color is coming from the sky, I guess, but it just is a little bit too rusty. I don't think the color, in fact, I wonder if this should be a color photograph. The subtle movements of the water, the tonal ranges, and the character, the crispness of the weeds, whatever they are. It's very nice. I just find the color a little bit overpowering.
Embankment. Red skies at dawn.
We can't hear photo name. It's all garbled.
They kind of crack up.
Skies at dawn.
Okay. So I love the play of the boat and the lights, and I like the sky. It's another case where I feel it's too saturated. And the other thing that's happening here with the way it's presented, it strikes me as, is this a photograph of a photograph? I maybe I'm a purist, but I just want to see the photograph. I don't want to have this other drop shadow and everything else, unless that's really what it's about. But that for me is a little confusing. I personally find the photograph compositionally powerful. I just find that's all I want. And I would, knock back that color some. I think saturation is just something that people want to use to create drama, and sometimes this is overpowering.
Lord. And red-winged blackbird.
Oh. Well, what strikes me is the character of the bird. I do like that. I like the bird standing on one leg. Yeah, I keep getting messages here, so we do seem to have a loose connection in some, but anyway. So selective focus, the tonality,
Did you not hear the title?
everything you're saying is kind of garbled.
I can't understand any of what he's saying.
We can hear Henry. We just can't hear you, Michael.
Red-winged
Blackbird.
Yeah. So the composition's good, the tonalities are good. I like the fact that this bird has character. He's standing there. I don't know if there's anything else I can say about it. I think it's a good bird character study.
Kemp Davis. Serenity.
So, yeah. I don't know. Is there a disturbance coming from me because of this message? Is there a fan running in the background, which there isn't?
No, Henry, all of those are for Michael.
Okay.
His microphone or something at the church is making him garbled. You're very clear.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right.
Serenity.
Yeah.
We tried changing microphones. It apparently
Okay.
isn't that.
Yeah.
Much better.
I really like the tonality, the blue tonality here. This is very effective that way. My experience with this time of day with a light, I'm assuming it is the golden hour. I'm assuming there's a little bit more luminosity on that sailboat. I would like to see more of that luminosity. It's little, the field tone, the darkness of the field is good. I just would like to see a little bit more luminosity here in the boat. Otherwise, it's a very delightful photograph.
I'm pretty sure this is Jerry Posino, but because, and the reason I have a question is the next image is Serenity.
What? Okay, I guess.
They're both entitled Serenity.
No, I have this one titled Shades of Gray.
Michael, mine was Serenity, the boat, Rebecca Perry.
So that was yours? Okay.
Yes, thanks.
So this I have is
That was
Shades of
Rebecca
Gray.
Perry then.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's a very beautiful, delicate tonal study. I really like the flower expression. I like the gesture of it in the field, the composition here. There's only one thing that I'm a little curious about. It seems to be having some ghosting shadows around it. I don't know if a mask was used or what. I see a little break up in the edge along that front lower petal that I find a little distracting. So this might just be a little technique. If this is a digital file, that seems to be, then I would just clean it up because I think it's an elegant image.
Kennedy. Groom and friend.
Shroom and friend. Well, I have to say, I had to ask, and I looked around a lot. I guess I understand the friend. I'm not sure how necessary it is that the shroom has a friend, because the shroom has a lot of character, and there could be a little humor there with this grass friend, you know, and he's berating the mushroom. I don't want to make a story into it. I like the grass there. Sometimes I think we try to bring too much information through the title. So I would leave this to the viewer's comprehension. The one thing I find a little bit too much is the tunneling, the softening on the left edge. It's a little bit kind of surrounding. There's not enough radiation from that softening down to this very strong sharpness in the mushroom. I think maybe the mushroom area and the photograph altogether has a little bit too much contrast. I want to see more detail in the shadows down around the mushroom, maybe more shadow detail throughout the whole thing. Yeah, I definitely think that there's a little too much contrast. I'd back off on the contrast of this image. The mushroom, because of the composition, the relationship to the grass, and that character, those other parts of the grass, has a lot of energy, a lot of delightfulness. It actually does tell a story of its own. So I would just leave it up to the viewer.
I'm in my meeting. Oh, that ain't.
John Schickler. Silent figures in the mist.
Yeah, I think this is another good atmospheric image. I don't have much in the way of advice here. Good tone, good color, perhaps burn in the top edge a little bit. There's a little bit of flatness here. That if you want all that up there, and maybe even that could be cropped off. I was thinking about maybe burning it some up there. And this is tricky. I don't, it's so tricky, but I just want a little bit more black. I know that this is tonality. I know there's mist, but I would just like to have a little bit more black, probably in those birds. And I honestly really have to play with it. I don't know how to do it myself. I don't know what to recommend.
Carol Annis. Hemagami Sunrise.
I think this is very much what I was saying with some other things. I just really feel that the color shifting in here dominates it too much. It makes it, for me, too surreal. Yeah, that's what I wrote. It's good composition. I like the way the eyes drawn to the sunrise. I just don't know why it has so much magenta distortion to it. Even the green trees and so forth. And so I assume there's an intention to it, but that's what I mean about intention. I just don't get the importance of the need to bring so much magenta saturation into the whole image. That was the actual color of the sun. Well, okay. I guess part of what I do is I go to the rocks and the trees and the island and I get some color shifting in there. So, that's what you have to decide. If that's the truth. I don't know if we. Yeah.
Fred Morton,
Yeah.
the tree whisperer.
Yeah, I'm just going to say one more thing to Fred. That could be. I just sometimes I take an image, and and the saturation seems to be exactly what's there, and I make a decision that the saturation, even that's what the saturation is, would benefit. The image would benefit by knocking back the saturation such. But here, Fred, I'm looking at the color in the trees and the rocks, and it seems to be, and it could be all that magenta bouncing around. That could be the cause of it. But I would probably neutralize it a little bit. But go with your gut feeling, Fred. I appreciate that.
The tree whisperer.
It's a beautiful shot of the moon. I just really, I love the moon shot. I love the trees. It is very cinematic, very dramatic. I don't want it in the center of this black field. I wanted to do something else. You know, again, that's that aspect of, you know, I often remember that realizing that when we have cameras are kind of made to point at things. Single lens reflex cameras had us point at things. And it's almost like stalking. It's almost like hunting. And when we get something in the center of that viewfinder and we get it focused, you know, that's what the picture is. But I think this is too centered. And I would like to find a composition that isolates those trees against the moon more and gives us a sense of the moon rising. And I think he could do that. And I think it would benefit quite a bit by that. So I would play with that.
Heidi Nunnally. Waiting.
Yeah. Here's a case where the title seems to be perfect, you know. It is a really good, I'll call it a photo illustration. It has a lot of that good sense of waiting. It's perfect sense of what we do when we fish. Drive me crazy. There's only one thing I noted here, and this is splitting hairs. In camera composition, I just would love to see that line. I'd like to have ocean frame or be the whole field for that rod and line. It's a nice, delightful sky, but the line gets lost in it. So what would have happened, and just see if this shows up in any other ways when you're composing in camera. But I personally would have moved my camera up and got the line and everything contained into the field of the ocean.
Harold Lana, Washington Monument.
Yeah. It's impossible to escape the cross. It is so graphic and so symbolic. I don't know if that's an intention. For me, what starts to happen is I start to get a curious thing happening with that church close to the Washington Monument. There's a little kind of animation happening with that. I probably would do what I could to reduce the impact of the cross. It seems like, I talked about gun sights and looking, when we looked at the moonshot, the centeredness. This has another double centeredness. It is a crossing right in the center, and that is really powerful. And sometimes doing those things are exactly what's called for. I think you have to ask yourself what your intention was and whether this kind of riveting cross effect is what you desire.
Michael Bryant, where's everybody else?
Don't know. Okay. So I'm glad I'm here so that you can't hate me too much and start throwing stones at me. The only thing I would do with this image is the softness of the foreground grass is not necessary, does not enhance the space or the feeling that we want with this image. Where is everybody? I would just crop off a little bit right along the bottom there. And it also then would give a stronger relationship to the animal, to the sky. Yeah, here the color seems to work. So it's just that little bit of cropping I would recommend.
Venkat Sant, White Sands Exploring.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about pictorialism here. I find this to be a little bit too pictorial. And what do I mean by that? The message seems to be about this figure in the white sands. It seems to be about this figure moving into that. I want the white sands to be all-encompassing. So it might seem to be a crime, but I would crop out the mountains. I'd get rid of the mountains. They're not contributing here. They're just giving a location, and it becomes a picture. It's a picture then. But the message is in the power of this figure moving through those white sands, and that's what I would look at, and that's what I would work with here. Also, that figure is a little bit centered. Sometimes we run the risk of losing a shot by waiting a little bit. What I do then is I keep shooting, and maybe it seems to me that if this figure moved off to the right more and moved into those white sands, we know more where he's going, that would enhance the photograph.
Harold Hageman, Zen Tree.
Yeah. First thing I noted about this is the dance-like quality, the grace of this, the gesture, the movement of growth out of the water and its reflection are delightful. I probably would just crop into it more, a little bit off the bottom, a little bit off the right. In other words, just come in and just move in more to the grays. I don't know that we need as much atmosphere around it. I think it would enhance the gesture by cropping tighter. I guess that's the end of our assignments.
Yep. Jay Denning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the end of the assigned subjects. And just as a reminder, we have about 44 open images to evaluate.
Henry, I don't know if you could see that question in the chat from Michael. You may want to address that before we start.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I see.
There's a question in the chat.
So let me look at that. Yeah, negative space in minimalist photography is very important, but more isn't necessarily better. So I think I'm talking more about the amounts, and I'm also talking more about really getting a sense of the energy that happens between the figure and the edges, or the figure and the ground. That's a really good question. But often what's happening with some of these images is they seem to get lost in the space, and the image, the object itself isn't as well felt because of all that spaciousness around it. Also, it's very important when you start to consider whether you have things that in a square composition or a rectangular composition. I think you really have to look at how do you want to frame these things to work with the energies that you're trying to enhance in your subject. The figure-ground relationship is a very important element in giving us the message, giving us the intent. But I'm just saying, look at maybe feeling them more, fine-tuning them more. To answer your question, I think ruthless cropping on your own, it's different when you're making prints, but even then, if you do a test print, don't be afraid of cutting it up. Don't be afraid of just trying cropping in different ways. Or using those wonderful old black corners, matte corners, L's that you can move around and play with your cropping. Cropping is important. It happens in two places. It happens in the camera, and then it's going to happen again as you complete the image. But it's really important that you be aware of the dynamism. All the parts in the figure, and especially the edges and the amount of space around. That's why that rule of thirds, I definitely would look more at what people say about the rule of thirds, because it really is finding some place where the image can settle and create a particular dynamism that suits that particular image. By the way, I'm quite open to continuing this conversation via email and so forth. If you want to email me with some of your senses about what I said or questions like this, I'm totally open to doing that.
Okay. Can everybody see the image that's on the screen now?
Yeah, I can.
It's entitled "A Success Plan."
Yeah. Oh, I see what we've done. Yeah. So yeah, I got the images in reverse alphabetical order. So I'll start at the end. Lovely dynamic Baroque, Rococo, Dutch, Flemish still life. So rich. The only thing I would say is taking that photograph, I probably would have moved higher and looked down on it. The gun is a very important part. There are things there that are very important, but they seem to be all lost to the sweep of the space. So what I feel is that if you look down on this and compose that, because that's what still lives are about. They're dead things, and you can play with this, and it's a very rich subject, and there's a lot that can be done with that. But I appreciate the richness. I think it's really fertile territory.
Ed Dracuda, Ageless Carving of Colorado.
Yeah, I have one word here. One word I have is nice. Yeah. It's a very good image. I would love to find something to help you make it even better, but I can't do that. So I'll just let you be with the success I feel of this image.
Leo Vainberg, All Eyes on the Ball.
Yeah. Well, the truth of the matter is, not all the eyes are on the ball. Now, this is picky, isn't it? But when I took this and I cropped it myself differently, and I took out number 2, the figure number 2, and maybe cropped into figure number 1 and so forth, but the left side, then I could get that energy and all the eyes on the ball. I mean, it is a wonderful moment. The ball is really cooperating with you. I just would crop it on the left so that my eye can move with their eyes to that ball, because that's the intention I get, and I think that's a great intention. I just think there's one too many figures in the soup.
Ling Whitworth, Bad Hair Day.
Yeah, I can relate. I get this as a wonderful character. I love the relationship between the heron and the tree limb and the softness of the background and his goofiness, because I can relate to goofiness. So I think that's pretty successful, but if you want it to be Bad Hair Day, I think you need to come in and zoom in on the hair. I probably wouldn't do it. I think this probably is, you don't want to title it Bad Hair Day. I don't think it does justice to the photograph, which is just a wonderful character study.
Kemp Davis, Badlands of South Dakota.
Yeah, let me just be with this for a minute. This is picky. I would just take off maybe as much as an inch on the left side. I think the balancing, the light moving and silhouetting the characters on the buff is wonderful. There's such a quality to it. The clouds are just gorgeous. I would take it's a little bit too horizontal.
Mark Best, Ball Frenzy.
I don't know if this is the same photographer did the lacrosse thing. It seems to be a motif here. And I really get the ball frenzy. My eyes on the ball. I also cropped this for myself. Just to see what if my sense seemed to ring true. And it seems like the frenzy group is more important than those two characters on the left. But even if you want to keep them, I just think tighter cropping would enhance the frenzy. The frenzy is it. But there's too much atmosphere. There's too much soft space around it. I would just come in tighter. I think that the goalie, I guess, in blue is a really important character. I don't think Arriaga, 7, those two characters on the left are helping. So I would get rid of them and I crop in a little bit on the right. I'd just crop in tighter. And that would enhance the frenzy, which is important.
Bill Whitworth, Bloomin' Sunflowers, Wyoming style.
Yeah, this is a hard one because there's so much richness here. There's, you know, the loveliness and the importance of the majesty of the mountains, the sky, the delicately balanced cloud on top of one mountain, and then those luscious sunflowers. However, I really think that I would probably keep that. I probably would crop a little bit of the sky out. I probably could crop in. You're not in the same place I am probably. I just love square compositions. I was not a Hasselblad owner. I just really have come to love the power of square. And I just really love the bursting of these sunflowers. I wonder about the symmetry. I wonder about the centeredness of this. If you are, then maybe just look at the squareness and let them be at the bottom. And then they kind of relate nicely to the mountains, but I would burn in those mountains and the sky. And probably open up the flowers some, because you burn in the mountains and the sky, probably the whole thing is going to get a little dull. And I think there needs to be a little bit more pop to those sunflowers anyway. So there's a lot of potential in this image. I would just work with it in terms of controlling the tonalities throughout in the composition.
Philip Snyder, Blue Wall.
Really? It is. There is a blue wall back there. I'm being facetious, and I'm not trying to be mean. I really like this photograph. I love the richness of it. I love the serendipityness of it. I like the Christo-esque wrapping of the motor vehicle. In fact, that's what I like the most. Again, I look at the two doors that are framing it. It seems to me that the photograph is more in the center. The photograph could be more powerful as a square. It becomes, when you have those doors bleeding off on both sides, it seems like the pictorialism is more important than the impact of the image. The textures of the paper, the textures of the signs, the textures of the paint. It's not a street scene. It is really about the relationship of this motor vehicle to this wall and the colorations. Again, a lot of potential in this image. I like this image a lot.
Fisher Munford, Breakfast Buffet.
Yeah. So it's a good question of symmetry here. And I like the story. But when you say breakfast buffet, what my eye goes to is the egret. Both egrets, actually. The horses seem to be framing devices, but I know that's not your intent. It's a very delightful scene, but probably, if nothing else, then I also would crop in on both the right and left side. And that would kind of contain or bring our focus, our gaze more to the whole thing. There's nothing wrong with the egret being an equal player here. But I would crop a little bit more judiciously.
Fred Morton, cactus flower.
Yeah, I've put down my notes because I just want to go back and see these afresh. This too is, the graphic potential in this is what this is all about. There's some really nice parts of the light coming through the cactus flower. I really like the downward gesture, and that I guess is, well, I was going to say it's a stamen, but I guess it really isn't. I don't know enough about flower anatomy. But I probably would bring some light into the flower itself and cut back and the background studio light. It too, again, is a little bit too harsh. Here's another case that we're looking at, but we're not talking minimalism here, but this could be something that one of the 60s studio New York photographers did. But I think the white is too strong and it's too dominant in the bottom. I want to be involved more with the flower. I don't think you'll lose, oops, I just lost my notes. I don't think you'll lose the power of that gesture of the guts of the flower. I think that's very strong. Yeah, I will also take some cards and so forth and just play with what happens when you crop it differently. Subtly, just play with cropping.
Susan Kennedy, Carrie in cowboy hat.
I remember my notes. There's just such a wonderful playfulness to this. It's so curious. I just, working with models, I remember how important that body gesture is. But there's something really disarming about that really front on, right in your eyes, relentless gaze, that determination. So if that's what the photograph is about, it really does it. I mean, there's an openness and innocence and intimacy here. There's something about that determined gaze, kind of trumps that, excuse the use of that word. But, and I think it is overall just a touch because of all her warm features, her skin tones, the hair, the hat, perhaps is a little bit too warm.
Carol Hageman, Clash.
I really like the textures and the depth of this. I really want something to be in sharper focus. I really want that reflected tree to be crisper than it is. The energy here is just wonderful. I like the tones. I just want more crispness.
Harry Matthews, downtown number 35.
This looks very familiar. My first impression is, that the tree, the sidewalk, that shadow moving up along the bricks up of the sidewalk, the squareness of the bottom. I want those windows. Now, see, this is me. This is being brought up with a studio approach I want those windows to be squared off. I really don't want them to be kind of falling backwards. And you can do that. I'm just kind of noticing for the first time this also the telephone pole on the right side. And that also enhances the sense of wanting things to be horizontal and vertical. And maybe I'm wrong, even, but it just seems like those windows are awkward to me. They're distorted. Yeah. And I'd be curious to see who took this photograph. I can resonate with it quite a bit.
Dan Maurer.
Bingo.
Driftwood Beach at sunrise.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so rich. There's so many wonderful textures. The light is so good. I would just play. I would look at, see what happens when you just play with cropping it. I'm not going to tell you how to crop it. Just play with cropping. See if you can't just get those, free up the energies that are already there, primarily in that standing tree. I like the other falling tree. There's a lot of sense of destiny here. It's a beautiful image. I know I would crop it some, but I'm just going to leave it with play with cropping.
Michael Fleetwood. Flaming Bonsai. Well, you probably know what I'm going to say because it's kind of what I said about some others here. And I don't know what the source of the light is. It seems like there's light coming in on a red wall or something. Reflected light bouncing around can color everything. But there are ways, what I'm missing is a little bit of complement. I really feel the red is too dominant. I would like to have something more in blue-green range brought in if it's there, and I think it is in that bonsai. Those complements would start to free up some of the energy. The whole thing would start to sing more. The red wash over the bonsai, I think, is holding it back some. I would free it up with bringing some complementary colors that I think are in there out more. Jay Denning. Flyby.
This bird is so unreal. That's great. I really love the unrealness of this bird. It is so, I don't know if you drug this bird. It reminds me of Alfred Hitchcock. Sorry, I can go off in little stories like Alfred Hitchcock did a story way back, this dates me, of a pet photographer who had ended up with his frustration overly sedating the animals in order to get them to cooperate. But anyway, this bird is delightful. I love the direct eyes. This is a case where that bird flying right along that center plane seems perfect. It seems like having all that textured space to the right seems perfect. Yeah. What else can I say?
Cindy Walker.
Yeah.
Angry.
Oh, God. Another delightful image. This composition is just so wonderfully strong. Especially that one talon grabbing, I guess, I don't know what it's, yeah, I guess it's meat, fish. probably those fish bones. The only thing I would say is I would lighten up the shadow area around the right side of the eagle's eyes. Just a little bit, just a smidgen. There's that word again. Also the snow background, I don't, it's a little bit harsh. I don't know what to do about that. You can't do much about that.
Michael Orr. Hot air balloon over farm.
Yeah. I love the relationship between the pattern of the balloon and the fence. I don't have too much, I think this kind of works because of it. There's a good sense of movement. There's a lot of reason then that there's so much openness on the left side. Maybe enhance it a little bit more by just cropping a little bit more off the right, pulling that balloon towards that edge by doing that. It would give it a little bit more movement. But so many parts of this really work.
Curiosity winner. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. This also is a great moment, getting that ball just where it is, and the man's intensity with his tongue, a little scary. I do that when I draw. If it were my image, I would increase the energy of the horse, the rider, to the ball by cropping the top and right. Play with it. Just see what happens.
Joe Ring. I'm Henry VIII, I am.
I'm Henry VIII, I am. Henry VIII, I am. I don't know what else is there in that image. I just find the fingers coming in with the microphone just that little bit is uncomfortable. Maybe get rid of them. I probably would come in tighter on the figure. I probably come in, and so that his singing to that microphone, that wonderful bow tie, and not so much space behind his head and up above. I'm going to just keep saying that. Just play with the composition. See what happens when you perhaps energize a little bit more. I'm looking at the diagonals of the shadows. Diagonals often give you something to go by. If it was cropped in such a way that, and perhaps graphically twisted a little bit so that shadow diagonal became a little stronger in the background, I think that would be a nice touch too. But I would crop more judiciously.
John Schickler. In remembrance.
Powerful light. There's so many wonderful things going on with the reflections. I don't know exactly what's happening with all the tonalities back in that sky. I don't know enough about the actual site. This is definitely a little niggling. It's a little hair splitting. But these are the type of things that I think disturb some people, me included. I just would like to have that her head either overlapping the roof or down below it. It just is too close to this being holding that roof. It's just, and I know it isn't quite, but I think you have to bring the head in front of or below that sky or the opening in the building a little bit more. You know, it's amazing how much happens just by a slight shift of the camera. I'm also looking at the diagonals of the roof, particularly on the right. If you move the camera up a little bit, the diagonal of the right would take the force from the edge corner, that corner up there, and start to bring it down to it. I just think just to become more and more aware of the composition and the energies that are happening when you're looking through the camera. Because I think there's so much that works here that I can appreciate.
Dave Johnson, Lake Drummond Trio.
Yeah, I know Lake Drummond. I don't know if you can imagine what I'm going to say. Anyway, well, the horizontality of the lake, the stillness of the water, the movement of the clouds. I would just take a little bit off the top and enhance all that. Maybe when you do that, it's too horizontal. There's no problem with losing a little bit from either side. It's a balancing act. All I can say is play. That's all I do is, you know, something happens and I just go play. I get curious, like, what happened? What if I did this? What if? And I do it in the camera and I do it when I'm editing.
Kurt Engel, Morning Egret.
Yeah, nice moment, nice text, nice relationship to the background, the atmosphere, the colors. I have one concern, and it could be my eyes. I feel like the head, beak of the egret's a little soft, and that happens. But otherwise, it's an elegant, sweet image.
Pat Davis, In Strange Light.
Somehow, I have a feeling, and I've made it in my notes. Have I seen this tree before? It is really a wonderfully expressive tree. I don't know where this is, but it is really wonderfully expressive. I think this works very well in terms of the tree to the one side. In many ways, this is a fairly minimal photograph. By minimal, we also mean that, you know, the only things that are left are the things that support the intent, the essence. This tree is the essence. This tree is, you know, about us. This tree is about life, death. So I think all that seems to be working well to support that. I would probably, I don't know. Color for me is right on the edge. I probably would mute the color a little bit. It's a very fine photograph.
Martin Evans, Not My Best Ride. Oh, excuse me, Not My Best Ride.
Yeah. It's so curious. I am so taken by all the other characters. And as much damage is being done to this rider, it's all the other people who this seemed to be rather blasé, actually. That's what the photograph's about for me. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the details. Yeah. Yeah. honestly, I think it's all about all the observers. You know, the bull has made his statement. The rider is taking his trip. I love the hand of the rider, just kind of doing that Da Vinci-esque creation touch to the tail, the butt of the bull. But I don't know if that was your intention or not, but that's what's happening to me. A lot of little things. There's a lot of I really like the graphics around there. All this stuff seems to matter. I just get curious about things. You know, I look at is he the clown, the guy that intervenes there with the red hat? Well, I just really love that little vignette right there with him and the word we. I can't make it to mean anything, but it is a really nice graphic touch. So there's so much that works here, but I don't know if I'm misinterpreting. You have to decide.
Linda Schmiel, Open Range.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Looking at this image again, I think it's a fine image. I always play with the composition. I would see if there's something that's just taking a little bit off the right side, doesn't give I guess the stallion coming in more power. I'm looking, but otherwise, yeah, I think the texture, the coloration, the composition, the light, all work very well.
Ed Hageman, Portrait.
It's only, you know, I have to work too hard for this. I really like the portrait. I don't like that she's so much in the center and surrounded by this darkness. Parts that I like, I just probably would crop in more so that we can get more of a sense of her energy, because it seems to me with that dress and her gesture and everything, there's so much wonderful energy there. It's just too much field and darkness around it for my taste.
Sashi Iyer, Pretty in Pink.
Yeah. I am not looking at my notes anymore. My notes say, take a little bit off the bottom. See that little clover there? I don't want that clover there. Boy, you're going to think I'm a nutball, but I don't want that clover there. I don't want all that softness in the front taken away from the energy of her movement, her delight in moving towards you. Perhaps there's a little bit too much in the top too, but play with the composition. I think this is a perfect example of when you start with this really playing, give yourself the freedom to play. That's the word with this, by changing some composition, looking at it, shifting these L's, whatever it takes. Put your hands up, crop it. But it's so much of the beauty of this child, the notion of the pink and everything else is captured. So the only thing I'm suggesting is to see if you can't just get a little bit more out of it. Just because that delight, I know that delight coming towards you is there. I just think a little bit more cropping could help that.
Rebecca Perry, Salt Mountains.
Yeah. Well, I want a little bit more tone in the sky. I think all the tones, there might be a little bit of washout in the salt side, the lit side of the salt, maybe a little bit. So maybe it needs a little bit more exposure, if I can use that term here. I like the serendipitousness of the reflections. I don't think you need all that space below it. I will take off a bit right on the bottom, and I think it strengthens the whole thing. Also, this is a case of, maybe these salt mines, these salt pyramids are too contained. Maybe if you actually crop in on them a little bit, it seems to be against so many things I've already said, but the sense of continuing on, that there might be more of them, rather than them being boxed in here, being contained, would add a lot of really positive energy to the image.
Okay. Paul Bickford, just as a reminder, about 15 more images to go. So
Yeah, I don't
seize
have
the day.
That's, yeah. Okay, I'll seize the day. I won't make the joke I was going to make about putting a carp in the boat. I really like the serendipitousness of this. I really like the movement of this. I really like the fact that you took the courage to crop into these things so that we don't see a whole boat anyplace. The movement from the top down through the center boat to the right really works. And all the oars and everything else, well choreographed. Thank you. It's a good image.
Susan Van Manen, spiritual reflection.
Yeah, when I first saw this, I thought, well, God, it's too much. I do like the kaleidoscopic aspect of it, though. I do like that the bottom reflection is almost as pristine as the top part. So that it works. I think I'd keep it like that. That symmetry, that kaleidoscopic effect is good. Splitting hairs again. I don't like the car on the right side underneath the street light. I don't want this to be dated, that how that car does it. But I'm only going to say these things because what if? But I know we deal with realities.
Heidi Nunnally, split fascia.
Huh. I guess I'm getting a lot of softness or pixelation here. Maybe it's because of enlargement. Otherwise, I really like the graphic energy here. The red, gray, and black. But I don't know about some of the other artifacts that are showing up. But it's a good, strong composition that I really appreciate. There's so much working here. Textures, lines, shapes, colors.
Wiley Wanveer, springtime love.
Yeah. My first sense is, yeah, wow, what energy here. It's really very sexy. I would think what I first want to do is just come in tighter on those two lovers. Just really let their energy push against the frame of the photograph. It's a compositional thing. See what happens when you just play with that. Don't need to make pictures. We need to express what's important to the image.
Jerry Posino, strike a pose.
I know this guy. I love the verticality. I don't understand exactly why we're putting him off to the right. Is it too much verticality? What happens when you even push the verticality more? What happens when we crop it on the left side? Paralleling that tail. What happens if this vertical animal is a vertical, symmetrically vertical? Seems to go against the laws, but it seems to be what this one's about.
Harold Lanham, Surf and Lighthouse.
Yeah. There's so much light and color and energy that's going on here. The relationship between the clouds and the surf and the rocks, the textures, and all that. I really, really appreciate. This is just the kind of hairpin I am, to quote James Cagney. I would crop a little bit off the bottom. There's a danger there that probably would put the horizon line dead in the center. So I don't know what to say about that, but the foreground doesn't seem to be supporting the energies as much as all the other rock activities. So it's again another composition to play with. Perhaps be more aware in camera of what you can do in terms of that sky ground relationship. Symmetry can be really deadly. Play with the rules of thirds. So many things are actually working within that. The breaking of the surf, the lighthouse. It's just that horizontal skyline. It doesn't do the energy of the composition complete justice.
Venkat Santosh, Talons Taking Aim.
Yeah. Well, incredible force. I just would do what you could compositionally to enhance that diagonal thrust. Why not? Why not push it further? I would. That's all I can say about it. I appreciate the moment. I appreciate the energy. I appreciate the fierceness. I appreciate the tonality. Perhaps a little bit too much contrast in the Osprey, but that's the way it seemed to show up. But I would maybe tweak that a little bit too, and tweak and look at playing with the composition to increase the energy and the drama of this magnificent bird.
Carol Annis, The Sands of Time.
Oh God, isn't this wonderful? I just love the figuration here. I just really love, how figurative this is. And the only thing that I see, what I do is when I look at something, I say, well, what would I do differently? What do I want? Now, it may not be what you want, so it's fine. You want to know that. You want to know your intention. But I would have a smidgen more, maybe more than a smidgen. If there's more sand, and maybe this is in taking the photograph, I would perhaps give some indication of the vastness of the desert. I assume it's a desert. And maybe it's a beach, but it's the desolation and the sandiness of it, and the sense of this striving. This, to me, is not a crate and some logs. This is a character. And I really like the characterization.
Michael Bryant, Those Eyes.
Yeah, those eyes have it. There's nothing I would say to do this photograph. I would recommend probably everybody just put more playfulness into cropping. I would crop this a little bit differently. See where you are with this. It's an exercise. It's a practice. Yeah. I'm not gonna say, well, I'll do it here and here, just play with that. It's a delightful photograph of this wonderful creature.
And vulture. Touch of pink.
Yeah. I think this works very well too. It's very, very sublime in a way. Yeah. The one thing I will say, I said in the other one, is I'm just not a fan of framing these things with bringing matte color to carry it around it and frame it with a matte color. I don't think you need more pink to box in this wonderful bloom. The heart of it and the richness of it is in the center part. There's a little bit of the pink coming up in the right-hand corner and the left-hand corner that I don't think is contributing to it. The way the petals on the right side just touch the edge of the frame, I actually like. But I probably, I also with this would play with composition a more, but it has well felt tonalities and coloration.
Aaron Davis. Treat for dinner.
I just want to get it right in this critter's face. That's all I want from this. I just really like the panache of the dinner leaf, but I honestly don't like that bluebell. I just would come in and compose right around what this is about. This is this critter stealing this leaf or whatever and want to chow down on. I don't need the rest of the image. I don't need anything else there. The rock is good. The soft background is good, but too much of it.
Perry Troxel. Unfolding beauty.
Yeah. It is. It is. There's some little delicate parts. If someone can make me a composition T-shirt, man. I really like the energy pulling back in of the petals on the right side. But you see that one petal right in the middle going off? For me, that's deadly. I would just bring the edge closer to those right-hand curling back petals. It works pretty well on the left side, works pretty well on the bottom and the top. It's just a little tweak. It's the fact that there's one that's going off and it kind of robs the energy from the others that are a beautiful petal gesture. Tones, everything else is very nice.
Tony Johnson. Water playtime. I would open up the child's face a little bit more. I want a little bit more seeing the details of the child in the shadow areas. That might be hard to do without making it muddy. I like the gesture. I like the moment. I don't think you need to have that background light bar. I would come cropping in again. You got a weed and you got light bar there. I probably would crop in from the right side and the top a little bit. Maintain the square, whatever you need to do that. It's interestingly set off to the right that I like, especially because of that little plug hole, drain hole there. So, I don't think cropping a little bit on the right side would do anything but enhance the spatial relationship between those elements. Marianne Barnhart.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say this again. Why do we need all that sky? I want this area closed, no sledding, and these sledders and these trees and this wonderful winter. It's perfect. I don't need that vertical rectangle. I want to crop down, maybe crop in on the tree more, let it go off top, maybe a little bit more off right. That brings the sledders, the trespassers into a better compositional place. Also, yeah, there's a lot of nice things happening with those trees. So I think cropping in so that the trees are a little bit more dominant in the composition and really play off more of the area closed, no sledding sign and the sledder.
Carrie Gottlieb. Yorktown at night.
Dancing lights. I really love the thing. I know this bridge. It's been a long time, but it's a wonderful bridge. I would really like one of you to tell me what I'm going to say, because I think I'm a broken record. But what's of interest to me is the strength of the bridge, the lights on the bridge, and what that does to the water. The clouds are wonderful, but we don't need all the sky above it. Enhance the bridge quality. You know, it's a well-seen image. And I would just do what I could to not saturate the color, to see what you could do compositionally, just to make the viewer just kind of really nose to nose, really able to touch those dancing lights.
Sarah. And that's our last image.
We did it, huh? Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I have to admit, it's a little strange to just talking out into the void here. So I appreciate you all being there.
Aaron, are you there, or Marianne?
I am. I was turning on microphones. Henry, that was awesome. Thank you so much for your insights. And I apologize that you were staring out into the void, but we have well trained our photographers to turn off videos because it does sometimes impede our momentum in going forward. So we get some hiccups sometimes. So I think a lot of folks have just
yeah, it's just my perspective. I'm zoomed out. Anyways, I do a lot of work on Zoom, and I'm used to talking to people.
Yeah, you're starting to see a few faces pop back in now.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying that. I appreciate it.
Good.
And you know, the best situations, I would like to relate to the person and the image, because I think that's what it's all about. I think that's really important, but maybe some other time. And I really truly mean it. If I don't know if my email's someplace, but I'm happy to hand it out to this group if you want to respond to anything I said or ask me more questions about that.
Okay.
And I think part of my package here was my connections on Instagram, which I share most of my images, and I also have a pretty vital community of visual artists. So I would welcome you to join me on that. I didn't know I was going off screen so much. I guess there we are.
You have a private Instagram, so you have to accept people.
Oh, is that right? Oh, yeah. Well, it usually tells me if someone wants to come on, that I do. I'm sure you know what it's like.
I think we learned about what minimalism was tonight for sure.
I hope so. I mean, there's no formula for it, but there really is some place that you really can you really need to exercise your sensitivity to the energies of the elements in the composition.
We did have one question come in from Michael, wanting to know how you define a perfect image.
How I define it, I
Yeah.
don't define it, I feel it.
Good point.
I'm not trying to be coy. Listen, I think so many of these things, you trust your intuition, gut sense. You know, this is what I do when I compose too. Is just I have to see it. I feel my way through it. A perfect image is one that just doesn't beg to go anyplace else. It just is completely content with itself. It doesn't ask me to do anything. Now, my perfect images may not completely suit your perfect images. I want you to trust yourself and your own sense of perfect, and that's why you want to be aware of the intentions you have. But I think composition is a really powerful tool in terms of your own particular expression. So whatever you can do to practice that more, play with it more, then I encourage that.
All right. Well, I think your quote about the perfect image, I'm always looking for quotes for our newsletter. So I think we might see that again in the newsletter. I like that.
Okay. All right.
Henry,
Well,
you've
thank
been
you
an
all for
absolute
being here.
pleasure. Dan spoke very highly of you, and everything he said was true. He did a great job with this too. It's not easy to look at that many images from that many different people and be able to see through them and around them and in them and give good critique. So we really appreciate it.
I hope so. I'm out of breath. I'm sweating a little bit.
Good job,
It'll work
good
out.
job, good job.
Thank you.
Okay. You all have a great night.
You
Appreciate
too.
it.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much.
Take care, everyone.